Welcome back to another episode on the Grow Your B2B SaaS podcast, where we discuss all topics on how to grow your B2B SaaS, no matter in which stage you're in. In order to grow your SaaS, you will need to know what is working and what isn't. When done right, you would know which block would actually generate paid clients and what is a waste of money. It sounds easy, but it can be tricky and complicated to do. This is what you call revenue attribution. We're going to talk with Steffen Hedebrandt today. He's a CMO and co-founder at Dreamdata, and their tool helps B2B companies, and especially B2B SaaS companies, to attribute revenue. Before Dreamdata, Steffen worked at Upwork and Airtime, where he scaled the businesses and teams really rapidly. So he knows the pains you are going through firsthand. Without further ado, welcome to the show, Steffen.
Thank you so much, Joran, and looking forward to the conversation.
Nice. I'm always gonna ask this at the beginning. Why should people listen to you today after hearing this intro as well?
That's a good question. I think I can make a promise that I'm not gonna speak about stuff that I don't know about or haven't experienced myself, and that's kind of a principle I always keep when I do podcasts or talk at events or something like that. I'm not gonna rant about any sort of theory that I read on LinkedIn. I'll stay within something I've experienced myself and like relay that story as good as I can, because it's it's the truth as I see it, and not somebody's feathers that I have borrowed somewhere else.
Nice. I think that's a really good strategy. We're gonna talk about revenue attribution today. I think, in your own words, how would you define revenue attribution? And then especially with the context, of course, of being a B2B SaaS company.
I think in the simplest of terms, it's understanding how your company gets new customers. What path are they taking? Is there a path that looks to be possible to replicate? Is there some cheat codes here that we can use again? Like I used to play a lot of computer games when I was younger, and some games had cheat codes. And like I look at it as the same way. If we understand what actually took place as we acquired a new customer, it's most likely that we can replicate the tactic, so we can do more of it. And you can say the opposite side of the coin here is that we also want to help people do less of the things where they spend a lot of money but no money comes back. And that is some of the revenue attribution is a bit of a fancy word for it, but it's just many marketing teams do a lot of activities where they're not able to actually prove in any sense that money came back from their activities. And not that you have to measure anything, but it's actually just spotting the things that absolutely do not work. Those money could be spent on something else and making it more likely that your SaaS company will succeed ultimately.
Yeah, and what you said, the money can be spent elsewhere on the things which are actually working, which you also found out when you know what is working, and then you can basically do more of that.
Yeah.
Before, I guess, companies even want to get started with revenue attribution, like what should minimal be in place before you can even think about this?
So like if we're like, let's start super simple, then there's nothing you have to do besides asking the questions in your team. Where did that customer come from? Like starting to generate some curiosity about how can we tell a story about how this company arrived in our shop. I think it starts there, being curious about what is actually going on when we get a customer. And once you start to have this conversation, you can start thinking about simple techniques. On the sales call, you ask them, where did you hear about us? You can have forms on your website that says, where did you hear about us? Then you can do simple stuff like installing Google Analytics on your website, and like measures that are available for from one person to many thousands of people. It's not rocket science that you start caring about where does your customers come from, but I think it's the best thing you can start to do initially.
Exactly. Because in the end, if you know where they're coming from, you can start scaling that, of course. And it doesn't have to be complicated, as you mentioned. You can start really small with even having an onboarding, asking every call, like, hey, where did you actually find us? And in a previous podcast, people even said they went through the entire flow with a client. Like, what did you actually type in? What did you search? And how did you actually find us? Which is a bit much, of course, but you can do that as well if you really want to go deep manual.
Yeah.
When do you really need to start thinking about this? Like, would you recommend doing this like really early stage already, or is there something you might want to do later on?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I would say initially it's much better to just do a lot of stuff rather than caring about analyzing what you did, because you, like for any company, you will have to go through this cycle of a lot of experiments in the beginning to find out some sources that works, whether that's, do a cold outbound calls or cold emails, or run newspaper ads or do a podcast or whatever. You'll have to cycle through a lot of experiments, and before you start seeing those, some of them having leading indicators of something that looks attractive, then I wouldn't worry about analyzing anything. Initially, it's much better just to do a lot of stuff. Then once you get to some sort of scale where you need to make a decision on, should we double the budget here, should we hire somebody, should we raise money, etc., then I think you should start considering whether you should get a more sophisticated setup. But there's a caveat here, which is kind of the same with data. It's kind of the best time to start tracking was when you started the company, because then you have the full history of anything that happened. And because if you decide today, then you'd have to look through, are we actually generating data of every digital interaction we have with our customers? And then it's going to be 3 or 6 months before the data is going to be valid, because that's how long your customer journeys are. So it's a kind of, you want to start before you actually need it. So typical advice can just be to, think about your customer journey and think about every step of it. Are we generating digital reflections of it that we can go back to at a later point? So it could be simple things. If you don't have a CRM system where you work with your sales teams work with it, maybe you should start getting a CRM system so you can see you had meetings, you had calls, you sent mails, etc. It can be, if you do customer success work in your Gmail inbox, then maybe get a customer success tool instead, and so forth. Then there's probably many places where you are hand holding stuff that you can move into a platform that helps you keep track of what's going on.
Yeah. And I think the biggest advice here is, if you want to do something later on, and like if you're going to scale and you're going to hire CS people, then add something in place already which collects the data. If you're going to hire salespeople, add a CRM in place which actually collects the data, so you know what is working at the moment when they actually join the company.
Yeah.
When we talk about acquisition, which is of course a lot of revenue attribution, like what are the most important metrics in your opinion to focus on when we talk about acquisition?
So like through acquisition through online channels or stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be anything, right? So like there's a lot of metrics you can track as a company, but in the end, of course, it goes regarding revenue, like how much revenue are you generating? So I guess, like, what do you think is going to be the most important things to track? If you can only track 3 things, for example, what would you track?
Yeah, it obviously depends on which role you're at, but I think for most activities, most experiments, you probably want to both think about what could be a leading indicator, which is something that happens very fast, and then what could be a lagging indicator of something. So let's say we want to run like set up a new ad campaign on LinkedIn. Then some very early leading indicators can be, what is actually the engagement score of this ads? Like when we show it to somebody, are they actually interested in it? Do they start clicking on it, etc.? that is probably some of the early signals that you can see that you've set the right audience and the right messaging. Now, that is just one thing, because it just might be that you've made a super nice ad, but does it actually become sales pipeline later on, which is that would be then lacking indicators. Maybe you want to establish something that is not a one customer, because that might take 6 months in a B2B SaaS. So you might rather just be wanting to monitor, do we get more demo calls booked when we start running these ads. So I think in popular terms, any marketer today would say you need to measure revenue on your marketing activities, and that's true, and that's what our tool enables people to do. But you should also have ideas about what is leading indicators of something working, and if you're in doubt whether it works, you can go look here and then quickly spot whether you should like change the experiment a little bit and try something else instead.
Yeah, because as you mentioned, revenue can come in maybe 6 months later. So something needs to happen before, of course, it actually turns into revenue, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we released these benchmarks last year about our customer journeys, and the average there, which is predominantly B2B SaaS companies, was from first touch to a deal being won was 192 days in average, so more than 6 months. So it does take a lot of patience in B2B if you want to wait for revenue, and that's also why I argue for you coming up with proxies or like leading indicators that your activity is taking you on the right path.
Nice. And is there also any insights as in what is the average deal size then of that benchmark?
I think that doesn't make too much sense to look at, because companies are so different in that sense. Yeah. Like we have anything from like $100 subscriptions per month to like seven-figure deals coming in as well.
Yeah, because I think the assumption is always that the smaller the deals, the quicker they go, right?
Actually, now that you say it, I think we did bucket the revenue size also to compare to the time it takes. I'll send it to you after, Joran, and then people can go read it in the show notes. But I think that is there actually now that you say it.
Yeah, we'll definitely link towards it. If we go towards like companies are already doing revenue attribution, what is the most common mistakes you see companies making while doing this?
Yeah, so if we look at the landscape today about what are marketers doing, I think there's 3 places that they are looking and they're being misled. One is Google Analytics, which has been around for like ages now, and it's completely misleading people because it's absolutely not built to understand what's going on in a B2B company. If you're selling simple transactional e-commerce stuff, it might be valuable. But in B2B, we're facing these 6 or 12 months journeys, multiple people involved in the deal, and anywhere between 30 and 100 sessions on the website before you buy. And that means that Google Analytics can't help us in any way understanding what's going on. Then there's all the ad platforms where we buy our ads. They are completely blinded beyond telling us you bought a click, and at best that click converted in the session when they arrived to our website. But what can we really use that some email converted on a website for? We need to understand who is it, which account are they part at, did that account become sales pipeline, etc. And ad platforms have no clue about this. And then the last in this rant, the CRM system is also kind of regarded as some place to find the truth, but it's very, very useless as well for B2B marketers. But it does have, a lot of them have this original source or lead source kind of field that is updated when a conversion comes in. The problem though is that that field can very typically be updated manually. So the BDR can say, hey, that was my call, and it might turn out that it wasn't the truth. An example is that when we have a demo call booked, there's an average of 4 sessions involved before the call is booked. The CRM will say, in this session, the conversion happened and you came in directly. So all right, the original source was direct. But what typically happens is that journey doesn't start out of nowhere. It starts with a marketing activity, whether that's an affiliate or paid marketing or organic search or something else. So the CRM is always bound to overrepresent direct visits or BDRs that says, I called this person and I got a meeting booked. So that the situation right out there, if you ask me, is very critical. And that I think what we're trying to evangelize through podcasts like this is what people don't know what they don't know right now. So we need to help them understand how they can do it better.
Yeah, because in the end, these systems now currently don't talk to each other. And as you mentioned, like they're really focused towards their own metrics, like the app platforms, and of course Google Analytics not being fully related to B2B SaaS, and then you're relating on manual work from the SDRs, which of course like is bound to make mistakes. I mean, that's what happens.
Yeah, and I mean it's the same for your affiliate business as well. Like if the customers become aware about a company through you, but don't convert in the first session, and then they come back 4 or 5 times directly or through retargeting or something else, then you get 0 credit for it, despite the first time that the client heard about you was through some kind of affiliate collaboration.
Yeah. Oh, in our case, I mean, we still work with first-party cookies, so they will get attributed because we set a cookie period, and then that's what the SaaS can decide. So that still nice. Like works really nice. So in the end, like we even recommend our clients to run retargeting ads, so they actually retarget the traffic an affiliate generates. So it might be, I guess, like a combined effort. In the end, it wouldn't be a client, I guess, if they have not done that. So that's one thing. But when we talk about, I guess, like this is a process which isn't working. Can you share some strategies, processes you've used to attribute revenue correctly? And this can be a bit more towards, like, I guess, what you guys do at Dreamdata as well.
Yeah, you can say we do it as a service, but I can kind of describe the components you need to get in place if you want to do it yourself. So B2B go-to-market is complex, and there's a lot of data we need to capture. In general, you would need ideally you want to have as much data about your customer journey as possible available. That would typically involve what takes place in your CRM system, what takes place through marketing automations, what takes place through outbound software and customer success software. That's typically the tech stack you need to cover. Then you need to track anything that is going on your website and store that in a data warehouse where you have access to it and you own it first party. Then you need to understand all the marketing activities you did on all the ad platforms. And once you've set up tracking on all these places, then you need a way to identify anonymous people with who they actually are. And you can say that's kind of one of the first places it gets tricky. One thing is that you need to understand whether this anonymous ID has a computer, a tablet, and a phone. Those you need to resolute to the same person. And you also need to be able to, once that they then convert, push through a form, you need to be able to take their identity, who you now know is, and resolute that with all the other visits that they had on your website before converting. So now we have one user knowing who they are. Then you need to, in your data model, you need to then sort the user to the account that they belong to, because ultimately we want to build a timeline of every account and not just of every individual. So we can go into every account and look like, when was the first time we heard about this account and when did the account buy? And this is the process you need to go through, finding a mechanism where you can build an account-based timeline and not a timeline of individuals. Once you got that timeline established, then you would wanna connect the whole timeline to money, to revenue, and that typically is done through the CRM system, where you take what did we close here, because that enables you to take the account-based timeline and say all the touches we have here, does that yield money or does it not yield money? So that is I think the non-technical the non-technical description of what you technically need to do.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, this is why a tool like Dreamdata exists, right? Because if you have to do this yourself as a SaaS founder, as a marketer, then probably you wouldn't be able to do this, or you need so much development time that you're actually building a tool probably like Dreamdata.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's all, it also takes very specialized people that actually know what they're doing and they know what problems they're going to run into and so forth. So yeah, I mean that would be our argument for buying a service to keep this in place for you rather than doing it yourself.
Yeah, nice. If we, you mentioned, I guess, the benchmarks, and of course, you have access, or you have a lot of clients where you can see exactly what is working well and what isn't working. When we talk about what is working really well, is there something you can say based on any of the data you have?
Yeah, I can mention a few of the things that does well and doesn't do well across many accounts. One thing could be to mention review websites in those benchmarks that people can go look at. You'll see that the journeys that start through review websites tends to be around 65% faster than than other journeys. So like if you come from a review website, then it's a lot faster. So that means the takeaway here for you is to like think about, what industry am I in? Are there review platforms? Are we actually ranking nicely? Does our profile there actually look nice? Because it's people who are in market that are checking these review websites, and if we're not doing well there, we're missing out on some very hot leads that we could be capturing to our company.
Nice.
I think that's component one. Then if we take something that is really, really crappy, then Google Display Network, any activity there that is not retargeting, it tends to be just a complete waste of money. I have at least not come across anybody who have done any kind of acquisition tactic, often like going to cold audiences there and actually succeeding, getting some metrics that looks attractive.
That's interesting, because it does work, but purely for retargeting. That's kind of the.
Of course, it's not categorically true, but I've at least not seen it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And one question maybe regarding the first point you said, review websites go 60% faster. Like when you look at B2B SaaS, do you also have the knowledge as in which review sites work really well? Of course, you have G2, TrustRadius, Capterra, TechOne. Are there any platforms you see for B2B SaaS companies working really well?
So yeah, we use Capterra and G2 ourselves. Capterra has that advantage that they have a PPC model, so you can buy your way on top of the rankings, which is, you can say is somewhat contradictory to to what the purpose of it is. But if you're completely new in a market or on Capterra, then it's a way to like get some actions quickly. We can see, I think I took a look here the other day on the deals we win. I think 50% had been on our G2 profile. So it can have a massive impact on your business if it's something that you actually put some efforts into.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's overall good practice, right? To ask your clients to leave you a review. So definitely make sure you always do. Like, It's one of the things we personally do. For example, when people come and chit chat and they're happy, then it's an easy ask as well. Like, hey, would you mind spending 10 minutes to give us a review?
It's all about making the next sale a little bit easier. Like,
Yeah,
if there's just one more review, then the next sale that you're gonna go for is just gonna be a little bit easier because there's one more person voting that you can be trusted, that you're a good partner. And I think that's like when we talk about B2B marketing in general, I think people tend to forget that there's only one success for B2B marketing, and that is when we sell more in our company. So we need to do anything we can to make the life easier for money to come into our business.
exactly. Nice.
Maybe a last thing to pick is that when it comes to search, it's most of the times it's a waste of time chasing really broad keywords because people that search for these really broad keywords have zero intention of acquiring a tool like you do, and that goes both for search ads or for organic search. You're much better off going very, very, what you would call long tail, or very deep into the customer journey and do some content there that is super strong about that, rather than picking that very, very broad keyword that has zero purchasing intent behind it.
Yeah. When you look at it really practical, it makes sense, right? Because your ideal customer profile is looking for something really specific, and the more wider you go, I guess the wider you make your, not your ICP, but you're gonna go out of that bucket.
Yeah.
You're gonna have people on your site which are not actually looking for what you're offering.
Yeah. And then if you're not careful, then those people also fill up your retargeting cookies, and then you're going to be spending money on retargeting these people who have no interest in buying your product, and then it's
Exactly.
just a bad spiral from there.
Yeah, because in the end, retargeting, and then they might even book a demo because they think it's going to be relevant, and then they're going to take up sales time. Like we had it at the beginning ourselves as well, where we had a lot of unqualified things, and we made some changes because I was doing the demos, and which is taking myself way too much time to actually jump on those. So definitely be pressure for everybody's time. When you talk about, I guess, like marketing and sales alignment, as in, there's of course a hot topic always, but now you're basically doing revenue attribution, right? So you're doing the attribution, like where is it actually coming from? I guess, how does it also help to align sales or marketing to make sure that you actually attribute the revenue towards the right channel?
Yeah, I think here it's actually about enabling marketers to look beyond the first conversion, so they can analyze what they've done in a perspective of, did it generate sales pipeline or customers that we want? So instead of being super tightly focused on marketing just generating more email addresses, you can help them move their scope to, let's do more of the activities that generated a sales pipeline. And that shift, becoming focused on generating revenue, makes marketing do activities that are focused on providing high quality demand for the sales team, rather than just being stuck measuring how many emails did we collect this month. And coincidentally, that makes the salespeople very happy, because the marketing team is focused on bringing really qualified demo calls that are more likely to buy your product.
Yeah. In the end, it's super simple, right? Focus on the same metrics, have the same goal in mind, and then people are gonna align like naturally.
Exactly. I think so. That's at least one metric. I think in general, it's something that any company should strive to do better and better. And that means you cannot complain and say, oh, the salespeople are stupid or the marketing team is stupid. You need to get off your seat and then walk into the room and tell them, if you're a salesperson, this is how a good lead looks like. This is our best customers. This is the easiest. So the marketing team knows. Or if the salespeople is not showing up, then as a marketing team, you walk into the room and ask, is there anything we can help you with, or anything we can do better, or something you think we do wrong? Or like, let's go drink a beer and learn how your work is being done.
Yeah. Talk to each other. I think
Yeah.
that's the main clue here. We are coming a bit to the end, and I always like
Yeah.
to ask these two questions at the end. So when we talk about revenue attribution, what kind of advice would you have for SaaS founders in two different stages, starting with somebody who's starting out and growing to 10K monthly recurring revenue?
So like starting out, I would just focus on doing a lot of activities and like run on a critical gut feeling. Like just do some stuff and look at what are the leading indicators here that this is probably true. And if there's something that where you're in doubt whether it works or not, then it's probably not working.
Exactly. So do a lot of things and then figure out what is actually working and what isn't.
Just based out of your gut feeling and scratching the surface, because it's much better to like keep a high activity level at that point.
Yeah, and I think the one thing you mentioned at the beginning as well, right, is make sure that you do ask, for example, in the sales calls, in the form, in onboarding, where you're coming from. So at least you have some begin data to start with.
There's also a good conversation topic for any sales call. Why are you here? How did you hear about us, and so forth.
Yeah, I still do it often, and often they forgot about it already, or they saw, I saw your face on LinkedIn, but I also saw your product out there, also saw you there. So it's hard to put it back, but it's always a good question to ask, because then you know what is working and whatnot. When we move on, so we go past that 10K MOR and we're going to make a huge step towards 10 million ARR. What kind of advice would you give SaaS founders here?
Yeah, and then I would give SaaS founders particularly, I would tell them to ask their teams about how what they are doing in their team is helping your company make more money, and continuously challenge this narrative or this explanation. So if you're a sales team, then ask them, how are you generating money? How is the marketing team generating money? So the whole company gets curious about how this process looks like. And then hopefully some of the smarter cookies out there would then say, I must be some kind of technical solution to this question. But I think the most important thing is just being super both curious and ambitious about understanding how do we generate revenue and what can we do more of to generate more revenue.
Yeah, nice. I guess the final question, what is, and this could be more general, like what is one thing you wish you knew 10 years ago?
I think it's the fact that most marketing tactics stop working at some point. So that means that when something works, you really, really need to double down at that very moment, because it's going to stop working at some point. You know, most things works like an auction. So the more competition there is, the less it starts working. And that, that goes from Google ads to Facebook ads to LinkedIn ads to podcast, etc. It has its honeymoon days, and then people tell each other that it works, and then it doesn't work anymore. So there's one thing, go super deep while it's working, but also make sure to plant a few seeds here and there, so they're ready to prosper once the original source stop working.
Yeah, and I think that's a bit the hustle phase you mentioned at the beginning. Keep trying new things, or keep trying things, so don't always stick to, I guess, what's
working. But it's a fine line, because also when you find something that works, you also really need to pay attention and double down on it, because that's what's going to pay for all the other experiments. So you can't just run away once you find something that works and try other stuff. You really, really need to keep drilling once it's working. But just be aware that it's going to stop working at some point, and then you would wish that you had some small experiments running on the side.
Exactly. Nice. Cool. If people want to get in contact with you, Steffen, how would they? What would be the best way to do so?
Yeah, that would definitely be linked in, so they can just connect, and I'll be happy to answer most questions.
Yeah, and make sure you probably mention that you're gonna come from this podcast, because otherwise you
Yes,
might not
please mention
accept it.
that.
Because in the end, I mean, I have, not to brag, but 200 open invitations with people who wants to offer all their services to me.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's make sure you mention something in the invitation. Cool. Thank you for coming on. I think for people who really want to get started with this, like Dreamdata does have a free trial where you can track up to 30,000 monthly users. So we before I jumped on this call, I actually signed up this week to
Oh,
get
nice.
Dreamdata started. So for us as well, this is a topic I wanted to address because we're actually experiencing it right now. So I guess like I'm doing the pitch for you. Sign up to Dreamdata if you
Please.
actually want to get things started.
Thank
Thanks
you,
again
Joran.
for no worries. Thank you again for coming on to the show, Steffen.
My pleasure. Thank you, Joran.
No worries. Bye bye.